A Brampton-based immigration consultant of Indian origin has gone viral.
A second round of anti-immigration rallies is kicking off in Australian cities today.
At the start of the 2020s, immigration didn't just return to the national conversation. It took it over. By the end of fiscal year 2023, US Customs and Border Protection recorded more than 2.4 million encounters at the southern border, the highest number ever documented in a single year. In parts of 2024, those numbers dipped, but the pressure didn't disappear. As the country moved into 2025, the system remained under historic strain. And yet, there's a critical detail that often gets lost in the headlines. Unauthorized immigration does not affect every state the same way. Its impact isn't spread evenly across the map. It's uneven, concentrated, and deeply shaped by where people settle. Today, an estimated 10.5 to 11 million unauthorized immigrants live in the United States. But the real story isn't just how many people are here. It's where they live, and what that means for classrooms, for state budgets, and for local systems already stretched thin. Because in some states, the effects are manageable. In others, they're reshaping entire communities. Today, we're counting down the top 10 US states with the largest unauthorized immigrant populations, using the most recent state-level estimates available through 2024 and early 2025. We'll also examine what the data shows about public education, state spending, and local services, focusing on measurable impacts, not political talking points. This is a data-driven look at one of the most complex issues in modern America. Number 10. Virginia is often called the Old Dominion, a state shaped by history, colonial settlements, Civil War battlefields, and just across the river, the seat of federal power itself. But in recent decades, Virginia has taken on a very different role. It has become one of the most affected non-border states in the immigration debate. Its proximity to Washington, D.C. matters. So does its economy, construction, hospitality, cleaning services, food service. Industries that depend on large workforces continue to draw workers into the region. According to the most recent estimates, between 400,000 and 420,000 unauthorized immigrants now live in Virginia. That number has remained relatively stable since the early 2020s. But what's changed is where people live. Today, the highest concentrations are found in Northern Virginia and the Richmond metro area, regions already facing high housing costs and limited space for growth. One of the clearest impacts is education. Well over 100,000 students in Virginia public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. Most of these children are US citizens. That means Virginia's school districts must provide English language instruction, transportation, specialized staff, and expanded classroom capacity. Education is one of the largest line items in any state budget. And in Virginia, that pressure continues to build. Healthcare has also become a growing factor. In recent years, Virginia expanded state-funded health coverage for children regardless of immigration status, increasing enrollment and costs tied to public healthcare systems. Emergency care for uninsured residents continues to place financial pressure on hospitals and local governments, especially in high-density areas. And while Virginia is not a border state, law enforcement and court systems still absorb costs tied to detention, processing, and cooperation with federal immigration authorities. All of this unfolds just miles from where immigration policy is debated and decided, which makes Virginia's role in this story especially striking. And as we move forward in this countdown, the scale only increases. Number 9. Arizona has been at the center of the immigration conversation for decades. It shares a long border with Mexico, more than 370 miles. The terrain is unforgiving. Desert heat, remote crossings, dangerous routes. For years, Arizona has served as one of the primary entry points into the United States. As of the most recent estimates, between 430,000 and 460,000 unauthorized immigrants live in Arizona. That number is lower than its peak in the late 2000s. But in recent years, it has stabilized rather than declined. Arizona also has one of the highest shares of mixed-status households in the country. Families where some members are US citizens and others are not. That reality creates challenges far beyond border enforcement. Education is one of them. Tens of thousands of students in Arizona public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent, requiring expanded language services, transportation support, and specialized staff, costs that fall largely on state and local governments. Healthcare is another. Emergency medical care for uninsured residents remains a significant pressure point, particularly in border counties where hospitals often serve as the first and last line of care. Housing adds another layer. Many communities in southern Arizona already face limited affordable housing, and population pressures continue to strain rental markets and local assistance programs. And while Arizona is known for enforcement, the state's courts, detention facilities, and local law enforcement agencies still absorb ongoing costs tied to processing, detention, and cooperation with federal authorities. Arizona's experience has shaped national immigration policy debates for decades. But as this list continues, it becomes clear. Arizona is only the beginning. Number 8. North Carolina shows how immigration has shifted far beyond the border. Over the last 20 years, the state has changed dramatically. Manufacturing expanded, logistics hubs grew, construction surged, healthcare systems scaled up. With that growth came people. As of 2024 and early 2025 estimates, between 470,000 and 500,000 unauthorized immigrants now live in North Carolina. That growth is most visible in metro areas like Charlotte and Raleigh, regions already experiencing rapid population increases and rising housing costs. But the impact reaches well beyond the cities. Education systems have felt it first. Between 120,000 and 130,000 students in North Carolina public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. Most of those children are U.S. citizens. School districts have had to expand classroom space, English language instruction, transportation services, and specialized support staff. Healthcare has also become a growing pressure point. Emergency rooms and community clinics, especially in rural counties, absorb much of the cost for uninsured care, stretching systems that were never built for rapid population growth. Housing adds another layer. What makes North Carolina's situation unique is this. It is not a border state, and its systems were not designed for this scale of immigration. And as we move higher on this list, the numbers and the pressure only increase. Number 7. Georgia's population growth has reshaped the state. Nowhere is that more visible than Metro Atlanta, one of the fastest growing regions in the country. Film production expanded, logistics hubs multiplied, construction surged, all of it fueled demand for labor. As of the most recent estimates, between 500,000 and 540,000 unauthorized immigrants live in Georgia. That growth has not been evenly distributed. Much of it has shifted into suburban counties, areas that grew quickly but were never designed for rapid population increases. Education systems have felt the pressure. School enrollment tied to unauthorized immigrant households now exceeds 140,000 students statewide. Districts have had to expand classroom space, English language instruction, transportation routes, and support services. Healthcare adds another layer. Hospitals and clinics, particularly outside Atlanta's urban core, absorb the cost of uninsured care, placing strain on systems already stretched thin. Housing pressures have followed close behind. As suburban growth accelerates, rental markets tighten, infrastructure lags, and local governments struggle to keep pace. Georgia has pursued stricter immigration enforcement than many states. But enforcement alone has not slowed population momentum, especially in fast-growing suburban regions. And from this point forward, the scale only increases. Number 6. Illinois has long been a major immigrant destination. At the center of it all is Chicago, one of the largest metropolitan economies in the country. Transportation networks converge here. Manufacturing remains a backbone. Service industries continue to expand. Together, they have made Illinois a long-standing draw for workers. As of the most recent estimates, between 620,000 and 650,000 unauthorized immigrants live in the state. That number has remained relatively stable over the past decade. But stability does not mean impact is small. Education systems across Illinois have felt it. An estimated 220,000 to 230,000 students in Illinois public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. Most of those children are U.S. citizens. School districts have had to expand classroom capacity, English language instruction, transportation services, and specialized support staff. Healthcare has become another pressure point. Hospitals and community clinics, particularly in and around Chicago, absorb the cost of emergency care for uninsured residents, stretching systems already facing staffing shortages and budget constraints. Housing adds further strains. High demand in the Chicago metro area has tightened rental markets, increasing pressure on affordable housing and local assistance programs. Illinois has also stood at the center of national debates over sanctuary policies and migrant relocation, especially since 2022. As new arrivals were redirected to the state, costs tied to shelter, healthcare, and temporary housing rose sharply, pushing immigration from an abstract policy issue into a daily operational challenge. And as this list moves into the top 5, the scale of impact becomes impossible to ignore. Number 5. New Jersey's location matters. It sits directly between New York City and Philadelphia, two of the largest economic centers in the country. Dense job markets, strong transit access, and long-established immigrant communities. All of it attracts newcomers. As of the most recent estimates, between 680,000 and 710,000 unauthorized immigrants live in New Jersey. That places the state among the highest in the nation. Despite its small geographic size, population density is the defining factor here. More people, less space, and little room for error. Education systems have felt the pressure. More than 130,000 students in New Jersey public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. School districts have had to expand classroom capacity, English language instruction, transportation routes, and student support services. Housing is an even sharper pressure point. New Jersey already has some of the highest housing costs in the country, and population growth has tightened rental markets further, increasing demand for affordable housing and emergency assistance. Healthcare adds another layer. Hospitals and clinics, especially in densely populated counties, absorb the cost of the uninsured and emergency care, placing added strain on systems operating in one of the most expensive states to deliver services. Transportation and infrastructure also feel the impact. Transit systems, roadways, and public services operate at near capacity, leaving little flexibility as demand increases. And with density this high, small increases in population translate into outsized pressure. If you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, feel free to let me know in the comments, especially if you live in one of these states. Because from this point forward, the scale shifts dramatically. Number 4. For more than a century, New York has symbolized immigration. Ellis Island may be history, but immigration remains a defining force. Today, New York stands at the intersection of legacy and reality. As of 2024 and early 2025, between 1.1 and 1.2 million unauthorized immigrants live in the state. That number has remained relatively stable for years. What has changed is the strain on systems. Recent migrant arrivals have created new and immediate challenges, especially in New York City. Shelter systems reached capacity, emergency housing expanded rapidly, and temporary accommodations became long-term solutions. Healthcare services have also felt the pressure. Hospitals and clinics continue to absorb the cost of emergency and uninsured care, stretching already overburdened systems in one of the most expensive healthcare markets in the country. Education remains one of the largest impacts. Between 270,000 and 300,000 students in New York public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. School districts have had to balance classroom capacity, language services, transportation needs, and student support programs. In 2024, New York City projected billions of dollars in migrant-related costs, largely tied to shelter, housing, and emergency services, a figure that reshaped city budgets and state-level debates. What makes New York unique is this. It is not experiencing immigration for the first time. It is experiencing it at scale, under modern economic pressure. And yet, Even New York does not top this list. Number 3. Florida's economy depends heavily on labor-intensive industries. Tourism, agriculture, construction, hospitality. For decades, immigration has been deeply woven into that workforce. As of the most recent estimates, between 1.1 and 1.2 million unauthorized immigrants live in Florida. That places the state neck and neck with New York, despite having a very different economic structure. The impact is especially visible in education. Roughly 300,000 students in Florida public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. School districts have had to expand classroom capacity, language services, transportation, and student support programs, but Florida's challenges extend well beyond schools. In 2023 and 2024, the state passed some of the strictest immigration enforcement laws in the country. Those policies reshaped labor markets almost immediately. Employers in agriculture, construction, and hospitality reported labor shortages, delayed projects, and rising costs, particularly in rural and coastal regions. Healthcare systems have also felt the effects. Emergency rooms and community clinics continue to absorb the cost of uninsured care, especially in areas with large seasonal and migrant populations. Housing adds another layer of strain. Rapid population growth, combined with tourism demand, has tightened rental markets and increased pressure on affordable housing across much of the state. Florida's situation reveals a central tension: an economy built on labor, policies designed to restrict it. And yet, despite aggressive enforcement, the population size remains among the largest in the United States. And as this countdown continues, the scale only grows larger. Number 2. Texas sits at the center of the modern immigration story. It shares more than 1,200 miles of border with Mexico, longer than any other state. Its cities are vast, its economy is massive, and major migration routes converge here. For decades, Texas has absorbed the frontline impact of unauthorized immigration. As of 2024 and early 2025 estimates, between 2.1 and 2.3 million unauthorized immigrants live in Texas, second only to California. The scale alone sets Texas apart. Education systems feel it most clearly. Between 800,000 and 900,000 students in Texas public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. That figure is larger than the total student populations of some US states. School districts have had to expand classroom space, transportation networks, language instruction, and student support services. But education is only part of the picture. Healthcare systems along the border and in major cities absorb significant emergency and uninsured care costs, often serving as the first point of contact for newly arrived populations. Housing adds further strain. Rapid population growth, combined with limited affordable housing in many regions, has pushed local governments to stretch resources across shelters, temporary housing, and assistance programs. Texas has pursued some of the most aggressive state-level enforcement strategies in the country since 2023. National Guard deployments, expanded law enforcement authority, and state-funded border operations. These efforts have reshaped enforcement, but not the scale. In absolute numbers, Texas remains one of the most affected states in the nation. Which brings us to number 1. California stands alone. No other state comes close. As of the most recent estimates available in 2025, between 3 and 3.3 million unauthorized immigrants live in California, more than any other state in the nation. That population is larger than the entire population of several US states. California's economy plays a major role. Its agricultural sector relies heavily on labor. Its service industries are vast, and its proximity to Mexico has made it a primary destination for decades. But the scale is what sets California apart. Education systems feel it first. More than 1 million students in California public schools live in households with at least one unauthorized parent. That single number reshapes everything: school funding, classroom capacity, language services, transportation, and long-term planning. Healthcare adds another layer. California has expanded access to state-funded health programs, increasing enrollment and costs tied to public healthcare systems, particularly emergency and preventative care. Housing pressure is impossible to ignore. High population density, limited affordable housing, and ongoing migration have pushed rental markets to their limits, forcing local governments to rely on temporary housing, assistance programs, and long-term development plans. And because California operates at this scale, small changes become massive expenses. This is why immigration debates in California are inseparable from discussions about education, housing, healthcare, and state spending. Not because the issue is new, but because nowhere else in the country carries it at this magnitude. This is where the conversation becomes more complex. There is no single, universally accepted net cost figure for unauthorized immigration at the state level. Not because the costs don't exist, but because they are distributed, variable, and measured differently depending on the system. What can be measured reliably includes a few key areas: public education costs, emergency healthcare spending, shelter and housing programs, and state and local taxes paid. Education is the largest and most consistent public expense. Public schools are required to serve all students, regardless of immigration status. That includes classroom instruction, transportation, language services, and student support programs. Healthcare follows closely behind. Emergency rooms and public hospitals provide care regardless of insurance or status, often absorbing costs that are passed on to state and local governments. Housing and shelter programs add another layer. Temporary housing, emergency assistance, and long-term affordability programs have expanded in many states as population pressures grow. At the same time, unauthorized immigrants contribute financially. Recent analyses show they pay tens of billions of dollars each year in state and local taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, directly or through rent, and income taxes, including payroll deductions. What makes the issue difficult is that costs and contributions do not occur in the same places, or at the same times. A school district may absorb immediate costs, while tax revenue flows elsewhere. That imbalance, between where services are used and where revenue is collected, sits at the center of the national debate. And it's why immigration remains one of the most challenging policy questions facing the country today. Unauthorized immigration is one of the most complex issues facing the United States today. Its effects are real, they are measurable, and they are not evenly spread. From classrooms and housing markets, to healthcare systems, state budgets, and labor markets. The states at the top of this list are navigating pressures unlike anywhere else in the country. These are not abstract numbers. They shape daily life. They influence local decisions. And they determine how communities adapt or struggle under change. And as immigration patterns continue to evolve into 2025 and beyond, one question remains. Where are these unauthorized immigrants coming from? And which states could feel the impact next? That's the next piece of the puzzle. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider liking the video. It helps more people find thoughtful, data-driven content like this. And if you want to keep exploring the bigger picture behind the numbers, subscribe to the channel. Because this story isn't just about borders. It's about how the map keeps changing. This is the bigger map,